Dr. Smith, we have a number of questions that we have received from our viewers, so we'll go ahead and start with the first one. And this question is, I was going to ask when the vaccine is ready to be given to the people other than healthcare workers, how long will it be before people like myself who are compromised as far as their immune system and on oxygen around the clock, how long would it be for them to get a shot?
That obviously will be determined by the criteria that the CDC and other government agencies established for distribution. But based on the criteria that have been circulated from the UK, it would look like you would be somebody that would be in the second or third tier, which means very, very early in the process. Your age would be another determining factor in that. That is also one of the criteria, as well as the underlying illnesses that help to determine priority.
To piggyback off that, I'm going to ask my own question. When would you foresee, Dr. Smith, the vaccines arriving in East Tennessee?
The best guess right now, if everything went the way that everyone's hoping, the FDA would rule on the 10th and we would have vaccine on the 11th.
Good to hear, hopefully. Our second question, 3 years ago, after receiving the flu vaccine for 25 years, I had a severe reaction and was told never to get it again for the rest of my life. How will this affect me from receiving the COVID vaccine when it becomes available to the general public?
Well, obviously the Moderna and Pfizer vaccines are totally different technology, totally different ingredients, and there should be no cross-reactivity. The Janssen vaccine that'll probably get approved early next year is also new technology that would not have cross-contamination from prior technologies. So for many of these vaccines, you're going to be fine. This is really a question, though, that ultimately you should discuss with your family physician and make that decision jointly.
Very good. Our next question, will people get to choose which vaccine they get if there are multiple ones approved? And how do those recommendations work with a physician?
Well, initially, at least, there's going to be limited supplies of the vaccines. And so people will be advised to take whatever is available when their group priority would allow them to get a vaccine. Any of the vaccines that are going to be approved are going to be effective, and that waiting on one or the others for a slight difference in percentage effect is really not realistic. The key message that needs to be emphasized in this as well is there have been no serious cases of COVID infections in people that have received the vaccine, and there have been no deaths. And as a result, even if you were to get COVID, there is every reason to believe that you're going to have a much milder case, and that you are going to be much better off than if you were not vaccinated at all.
Absolutely. Will the vaccine be a 1 or 2 and then done, or will we need a vaccine every year like we do with the flu shot?
Well, first of all the vaccines that are currently being tested in the US that are close to approval are all 2 injections, except for the Janssen J&J vaccine, which they're going to try a single injection. So that 2 injections is going to be the norm. How long these vaccines are going to last, we don't know. From SARS and some of the other coronavirus infections, the antibody and the recognition cells have lasted for some time. So there's hope that this may last longer than just an annual vaccine. The studies that have been that are being used for approval run 2 years, so that we're going to continue to follow antibody levels. We're going to continue to see if there are infections that develop a year or 18 months after vaccination that would tell us how long these really last. Um, so we're hopeful that particularly with some of these newer technologies that they're going to last longer, but we do not have that information.
Still some question marks for sure.
That's why it's important to continue to enroll and participate in these studies so that we can answer some of these remaining questions about duration, about uh, effectiveness long term, et cetera.
And there are going to be more and more studies that are going to be coming. I know we've heard a lot about Moderna and Pfizer and Johnson and Johnson, AstraZeneca, but expect more in the future, correct?
Absolutely. You know, several of the big international vaccine companies, Sanofi Pasteur, that's the largest vaccine company in the world, Bavarian Nordic, the Canadian companies, they're all just now starting their programs, so that we're going to see a need for volunteers in these studies over the next few months as well. Um,
Well, we'll go on to our next viewer question, and it is, if you have had COVID-19, do you still need to take the vaccine when it becomes available? Would it be safe for a person in that situation to take the vaccine?
yes, the most current recommendations from CDC and public health authorities is that for people to go ahead and be vaccinated when it's available to their group. Um, there seems to be no negative consequences of vaccinating someone who has had COVID previously, from looking at the data from the vaccine studies that are being evaluated. So for now, the answer is yes. As with many things around COVID, this could change, but it won't change because of safety. It'll change because of um, the better understanding of the innate immunity that you get from an infection.
This is something that you touched on just a bit earlier. What is the COVID vaccine made up of? Is there egg or latex, like in the flu vaccine? I had an allergic reaction to the flu shot. Would I have a reaction to the COVID shot?
And as we said previously, particularly for many of these, Moderna, um, Pfizer, Janssen, they're new technologies, so they're are not going to have those same kind of risk associated with them. The list of ingredients are long, but they are not egg based.
Mhm. I'm sure we would not understand one ingredient that is in it, but that says it right there. This is another question that you've touched upon, but really people wanting to know, when is the opportunity that I can get the vaccine? This person asking, when will a healthy younger adult be able to get the vaccine?
Well, my answer to that is we don't know. Um, this is being controlled by the government, primarily through CDC and state and local health departments, and there will be guidelines that will be published soon about when different groups. But the younger you are, the healthier you are, the later in the process you're going to get vaccinated. So if you're young and healthy, the quickest way to get a vaccine is to do one of the clinical trials. and then you're vaccinated in 50% or 2/3 immediately. And then currently, the plan is once the vaccine is shown to be effective, to cross the placebo group over to vaccines as well. So for young, healthy people, the quickest way to get a vaccine is to do a clinical trial.
Simple. Um, our next question. Early in the pandemic research, there was a theory about certain blood types possibly being immune or resistant to COVID-19, specifically A, B, and O. Has that proven to be true? And how does it apply to who should have the vaccine?
Well, it does not influence at all who should have the vaccine. Um, Everyone should have the vaccine when their group is, if the vaccine is available for their risk group. So first of all, get the vaccine when it's available to you. But it does appear that blood type O may have a lower infection rate and less severe infections. And it may appear that types A and AB have a higher risk of infection and severe infections. This was early data, and but it really hasn't changed. Is this significant in that if you're blood type O, you're immune? No. Does it mean that statistically there seemed to be some less severe illness? That's basically what the data shows, not that you're safe, or not that you're doomed if you're A, like I am.
Me too. This is a question that keeps popping up, and certainly you can provide an answer to it, as you have all of these. Are they going to put a tracker chip in the vaccines to keep up with us?
No. That is, there are many of these internet stories that are being published by the anti-vaxxers, but no, there are no chips in the vaccines. We don't have transmitters that are that good to where they could do it even if they wanted to, but absolutely not.
Final question. What assurance is there that there aren't any long-term side effects or dangers from the vaccine since it was rushed in development?
Well, safety in every way possible has not been compromised. The shortcuts that have been taken have been in the regulatory side in terms of the way that the data is requested and the parts of the data that are being looked at for approval. And all the safety data is being reviewed. Some of the secondary data that answers other questions about the vaccine, and this data is still being collected, but is a long ways from being reviewed and published. Also, the other part of the process that has been dramatically shortened is related to the financial risk. And if I'm a pharmaceutical company developing a vaccine, then I'm going to do my first series of studies. I'm going to look at that data. I'm going to see if the results are favorable. And then I'll go on and do a second part of the study after I've completely analyzed the first set to help me better understand my financial risk and the likelihood at an early phase that the vaccine is going to be effective. That risk was mitigated or totally eliminated by Operation Warp Speed, where the government has said, we will underwrite part or all of the certain parts of the cost of developing these vaccines, so that you no longer had to wait to assess both the safety and the financial risk. You really now are just looking at safety so that you can get to the phase 3 studies, the large studies, that are going to tell you if it really works or not.
Long story short, this vaccine or vaccines are critically important to ending this pandemic, correct?
Absolutely. And emphasize again, safety has not been compromised by the process, how it's been shortened in order to get them to the public as quickly as possible.
Dr. Bill Smith, we appreciate, as always, your expertise and your insight, and more questions will be coming your way. Thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.